these guys don't care about Ukraine. They're basically dragging
Yes.
it down into rubble.
They know they are unable to continue this war without the participation of the United States.
Yeah.
So they will wreck any peace plan just so that they're forcing the United States to continue
Yeah.
involved.
If they continue down this line, they're going to have a Saigon moment. This is what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't help themselves. And they have the Europeans pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yes.
And who's paying for it?
The working class, that is, the working class in the West, the working class in Ukraine.
The IMF asks, how can Europe pay for things that it cannot afford? The question is,
Mm-hmm.
can the working class afford the capitalist class?
Yes.
All of this machinery, all of this industry, these are creations of the workers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Against the Stream, the communist podcast which analyzes world events in order to reveal the true class interests which shape them. While we aim for the highest objectivity, we do not claim to be impartial. We stand unapologetically on the side of the poor and the workers, the people who make the world go around. This podcast is for them. Peace will be coming to Ukraine soon, suggests Donald Trump, but not everyone is interested in peace. Leaked conversations between top US and Russian officials reveal a campaign at the highest level to stop any peace talk between the US, Ukraine, and Russia. But why are they doing that, and what are the consequences? Meanwhile, Europe's descent into crisis accelerates. The European industry is fast declining, and the budget deficits are rising even faster. In a new report, the IMF is asking, how can Europe pay for things that it cannot afford? This should make you wake up. They want the working class to pay for this crisis. But is there another way out? Those are the questions that we're trying to answer in this week's episodes. And finally, we're going to be taking a question from one of our listeners. My name is Hamid Alizadeh, and I'm here today with Jorge Martín. Welcome back, Jorge. Ukraine is our first topic. And I think I was saying this to you the other day. When I was a kid, I came home from school and there was nothing on TV except for soap operas. And once or twice, I watched one of those episodes. I must have been around 10 or 11 years old. I watched an episode of this one soap opera that just kept going year in and year out. And then about 10 years later, for some reason, I watched another episode of the same soap opera. And I realized and I understood exactly what was going on
Nothing
the basis.
has changed.
Nothing had changed. That's how it appears in Ukraine today. We have Donald Trump announcing peace is coming. There's peace negotiations. There's a deal being reached. A deal is presented which more or less accepts the facts on the ground that Russia is winning, giving significant concessions to Russia, basically acknowledging what they have.
That's a 28 point.
This is the 28-point peace plan that Donald Trump, or that the Americans have leaked. None of this is official, by the way.
Someone has
leaked. And there's many, none of this is official. There's many versions of these plans. But in general, I think we can safely say they take into consideration a lot of the demands of the Russians that the Russians are carrying out in practice on the ground in the war. Then what happens is Vladimir Zelensky travels to Europe. There's a flurry of meetings between Zelensky and Merz and Macron and Keir Starmer. Some of the US officials go to that place. Often the people in the Trump administrations who are opposed to ending the war go meet them. This is what happened here. There was a meeting in Geneva. And they negotiate amongst themselves and they present
a 19-point
another plan, a 19-point plan, which, again, no one has seen, but clearly has reduced the key demands of Russia, which are the recognition of the facts on the ground, which is that Russia has taken, the land area that Russia has taken, and the ones that they're demanding in the Donetsk, curbs on the Ukrainian army, which in the other leaked plan was set at 600,000. We don't know, by the way, what the Russians think about that, but that was taken out. Curbs on Ukraine's
membership of NATO.
Membership of NATO is taken out. Curbs on Ukraine's, allowing the Ukraine to have advanced weaponry and long-range weaponry is also taken out, which means that all of the demands of Russia that Russia has been making, that Ukraine been made into a country that is militarily not a threat to Russia. Those are taken out. And then Zelensky comes out and says, yes, we agreed to this 19-point peace plan.
There's two completely opposite
It's
plans.
Entirely different plans. And then we're back at square one. But something is different this time around, I think. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think that there is a sense of deja vu, as you were saying. I also used to watch a soap when I came back from school, and it was a Brazilian soap opera that went on for thousands of episodes, and it was basically the same plot one again and again, and there is a sense of that. However, the situation is not exactly the same. There was a very interesting article today in the Atlantic by Simon Schuster, in which he traced like a timeline of events since the Alaska meeting between Trump and Putin up until now. And what he was saying made a lot of sense. He's saying that Zelensky, at the time of the United Nations General Assembly, convinced Trump that the situation was favorable to Ukraine on the military front. I don't know how, but anyway, he spinned that story. He told him that a number of Russian troops were surrounded near Pokrovsk in a northern salient of that section of the front, and that the Russians were going to be routed, and that if only the United States was to implement some pressure on Russia through sanctions, that then Russia would agree to come to the negotiating table. And seems that Trump did follow that advice. He believed this tall story that was put forward by Zelensky, who is a very skilled propagandist. He spins a story, and
he's a good actor.
He's a good actor. I don't know if he's a good actor.
Yeah, maybe.
He's a good actor, but comedian. And then Trump implemented these sanctions on Russia, on the two oil companies, in the hope that, because at the end of the day, what Trump seems to want is an end to this conflict, to disentangle the United States from this conflict through a peace deal. And but then, obviously, the facts on the ground wildly contradicted what Zelensky had told Trump. In fact, Pokrovsk has fallen. That pocket has been closed. It's a big military defeat for Ukraine. Either it's already happened or it's about to happen. It's clear to everyone, U.S. military strategists included. And this despite the fact that Zelensky has been trying to refuse to withdraw troops from that place, put them out of harm's way, and all for what? In order to continue this fiction that Ukraine had the initiative in this war. So these people are now dying or being surrounded, surrendering, and so on, just so that Zelensky can spin this story to Trump. Trump no longer believes, and no one anymore believes this story, and so now this is the motivation or the trigger for this new push by Trump administration towards negotiations. He then had Dmitriev, the Russian envoy or negotiator in the United States. They were talking to Witkoff, and they worked out this 28-point plan, which basically takes into account all of the Russian demands. Now, you say the situation is now different. Yes, it is different because of two things, I will say. One is that you've already discussed in the program, is the big corruption scandal in Ukraine, which is weakening Zelensky as his power, his authority, and is touching his immediate entourage, and is quite clearly involved in that. So he is weaker from that point of view, but also militarily, Ukraine is weaker. Russia is not only taken Pokrovsk and that pocket, but it's taken a whole number of other towns, or surrounded a number of other towns, and in the Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk fronts, it's advancing almost without any resistance at a much faster pace than previously. So clearly, Trump has seen this and is now putting pressure on Zelensky to sign a deal, whatever deal it is, so that there's no more because he's putting forward the argument that otherwise Russia will win even more territory, which is what the situation on the ground is. So that's why the situation is different. The Ukraine is much weaker at this point.
The Western media has been up in arms about this deal because it would recognize Russia's aggression on Ukraine. But someone asked Trump, what are the concessions that Russia is giving? And Trump made the point. He said they're conceding not to take more land.
Yes.
Which is the fact. I mean, I follow the war. I follow some of these bloggers every day. It's my it's my pastime. And if you look at the rate of advance, now in Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk in particular, the rate that the speed with which they've been approaching Guliopole, which is a middle-sized town in the region, is one of the last three remaining major cities. There's Zaporizhia city, which is quite far from Russian reach. Then there's Orykhov, which is to the west of Guliopole and southeast of Zaporizhia, which is where the Russians are on the city gates, but they're maybe a couple of miles outside. And then there's Guliopole. So this is an important city, and it will change the dynamic of the war significantly to the benefit of the Russians if they take it. It will ease logistics. And it would give kind of a front base of operation for the Russians further into the region. And the rate of decline of this front has just been breathtaking, because in this war, because of the predominance of drones, you cannot have these huge advances. They're not very easy, because you can't really go by car or by trucks and tanks and so on, carriers. You need to walk. And I think basically the rate of advance in this front has just been the rate that the soldiers can walk. They've just been walking from position to position, and maybe new soldiers have new infantry has kind of replaced them. But and now they've actually taken, yesterday, they were a couple of miles outside of Guliopole. Today last night, they've taken the eastern neighborhood of Guliopole. So it's gone.
And one of the reasons for the advance
this was a heavily fortified city.
One of the reasons for the advance on this front is precisely that Zelensky, for propaganda purposes, in order to convince the Americans, has concentrated all of his forces in Pokrovsk, where it's already lost, but nevertheless is weakened other areas of the front.
They sent in elite units into Pokrovsk, who were then surrounded and defeated. Even though in Ukraine, people were saying, why are you doing this? And Zelensky was coming out saying, oh, there's only 240 people there. There's only 60 people left in Kupiansk. Russians. We're just clearing them out. Kupiansk has fallen. Pokrovsk has fallen. Mirnograd is completely surrounded now. There's almost no path of exit. Very, very unlikely that you will get out of there alive if you're a Ukrainian soldier, unless you surrender. The Russians are now in Siversk. They've taken the majority of Siversk, which is the key city protecting Slavyansk and Kramatorsk from the east. Liman, they're inside of Liman fighting, which is the city protecting Slavyansk from the northeast. Orykhov, they're outside. And I was saying to you yesterday, I think, that in the whole area of operations, if we disregard Kherson, there's only 3 cities left: Zaporizhia, Slavyansk, and Kramatorsk. All the other major urban areas, the Russians are contesting right now, which is a completely different picture from last year. 1 year ago, they took Vuhledar, which was a fortress town, which took them 2.5 years to take. The distance between Vuhledar and the front now is much longer than the front line and Zaporizhia city. So the rate of advance is accelerating. And that is why they're panicking, the Americans.
Yes.
This is what Trump means. With the concessions that the Russians would make is to stop advancing at this stage, get some more land, but and he said, what do you want? Give some of this land away now, then have them take it a few months down the line at the cost of even more economic destruction, even more lives lost.
60,000 people killed.
The whole thing is collapsing.
Yes. And in fact, this is what Dan Driscoll, the Secretary of the Army, of the U.S. Army, said to its European and Ukrainian counterparts. He traveled to Europe. He was in Kiev together with someone else. I can't remember exactly what other U.S. official were there. And they had a meeting with Zelensky, but also had a meeting with European diplomats in Kiev. And he basically told them, look, the situation is bad. The situation for you, for Ukraine in this war is bad. It's getting worse. The Russians are advancing. But he also said another thing, according to some media reports that we've seen this morning. He also said Russia is now stockpiling missiles.
Oh, yeah.
He said basically previously Russia was using all its missiles in its daily, nightly attacks on Ukraine, but now they've basically stockpiling. This also means that the rate of production is gone up quite significantly for them to be able to stockpile because the attacks on Ukraine continue. And he said not only that these missiles will allow Russia to destroy the energy sector of Ukraine coming this winter, putting the civilian population in a very difficult position and industry and so on. But he also hinted that obviously then Russia will have all these missiles ready and available to attack other European countries. So he's basically telling them, you need to make peace. You need to accept these conditions, however harsh they may look like, because the alternative is worse. And Russia is winning the war, and it will get worse for European countries if you don't sign this deal.
Yeah, I mean, the NBC article, which reported Dan Driscoll's conversation with the Ukrainians, also said this. The U.S. delegation also said that America's defense industry could not keep supplying Ukraine with the weapons and air defenses at the rate needed to protect the country's infrastructure and population. So Russia is outproducing the West, the entirety of the West. They've been telling us for 3 years that Russia is running out of missiles. You remember? There's like, there's only 1 day left, and there's only like
using washing machine parts.
And now they're admitting the facts, which is that Russia is massively outproducing them, and in fact,
massively outproducing the West.
The entirety of the West.
Not Ukraine, but the whole of the West.
Yeah.
We did discuss this in relation to the bombing of Iran and Israel's war, that the amount of air defense missiles that the U.S. is producing is very limited. They don't have stockpiles. They're not producing enough for even their own defense needs, never mind supplying the air defenses of Ukraine, which are already severely depleted.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the scandal in Ukraine, although for the moment it's taken a back seat, but it's not over.
No.
SAPO and NABU, the two
anti-corruption
agencies, are kind of drip feeding in a very meticulous and clearly calculated way, drip feeding information. And every day, the revelations about these scandals come closer and closer to Zelensky, right?
Yes. They've interrogated a couple of people now. Have they interrogated Yermak and Umerov, I think?
Well,
but they haven't said whether they charged or not.
Umerov is the previous defense minister of defense. He's now the head of the security something.
He's involved in the negotiations.
Yermak is the second most powerful man in Ukraine. He's the head of Zelensky's office. Basically, Zelensky does the big talks, and Yermak runs the machine. That's how it kind of works. And what Zelensky has done is, instead of distancing himself from these guys, he's actually protecting them. What has he done? He's put them in the negotiation teams with the U.S. He sent them abroad, first of all, out of the limelight, and he's but he's basically tying himself closer. Meanwhile, in the Ukrainian parliament, there's a rebellion. There's an almighty rebellion. 110 members of Zelensky's party rebelled and called in the prime minister, the justice minister who's been involved in this case, and the energy minister who's also been involved. They've been fired, these two.
Yes.
Called them into, so basically, they against Zelensky's wishes, they called them in to answer questions for the Rada. And 110 members of his own party participated in this vote. The opposition, which is led by Poroshenko and what are they called? Timoshenko, and these other basically different oligarchs and different representatives of oligarchs, They want a government of national unity. They want to defang Zelensky. They want to have a bite of the cake, basically, and they want to participate in the running of the country and looting of the country.
And it's also a self-defense move for them because Zelensky was moving towards jailing them, Kolomoisky, Klitschko, and Poroshenko. And
I mean, he's been going one by one, starting from the broader periphery and closer to the center of the opposition, concentrating powers in his own hands. And now these guys want to have a share of the pie. So it's clear that the whole campaign from Nabo and Sapo is coordinated with these guys.
Of course.
There's highly produced video material which is leaked every single day into the media as if that has any legal justification whatsoever. But then inside of his own party, there's another rebellion because
in his own parliamentary faction.
Exactly, because the parliamentary faction has also been losing power because it's been all gathered in the president's office, which is where all of these scandals have been taking place. So Zelensky can't really run away from it. But David Arakamia, I think his name is, and Stefan Chuk, who's the speaker, Arakamia is the head of the parliamentary faction, and Stefan Chuk is the leader of the parliament, speaker of parliament, basically. They've been kind of whipping this internal rebellion, saying to Zelensky, basically, if you don't give us more power and get rid of Yermak and give us more power in your administration, we're going to sell you out and you're going to have to form a government of national. So the knives are out amongst the thieves, basically.
Yes.
And so obviously this is also helping. This is something that Trump and his gang are using.
In fact, there was an interesting point in the Atlantic article by Simon Schuster detailing the timeline of these negotiations. He said, the only reason why Zelensky is not agreeing to this deal now is that will make him look weaker come an election, because one of the parts of this 28-point plan was elections in 100 days.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone knows that the elections are coming at some point, and Zelensky will lose those elections. And he will lose those elections even more if he's seen as someone who's given away Ukrainian territory and all that. So, in fact, his considerations are nothing to do with the general interests of Ukraine, whether Ukraine is losing the war or not, whether the situation will be worse 10, 20 days down the line. In fact, his only consideration is his own personal power, whether he will win the next election or not, pure short-term electoral considerations.
I saw this tweet by one of his main aides, but she left him, I think, in 2020 or something, before the war, 2021. But she made a tweet. She was a hardcore Zelensky supporter and all that, but she made a tweet saying, these guys don't care about Ukraine. They're basically dragging it down into rubble. This thing is everything to do with their own maneuvering and nothing to do with the actual interests of the Ukrainian nation. I mean, that's a lot coming from
his own camp.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's a movement on the other side, on the western side, to sabotage this. It's clear. There was
an article in, where was it? I can't remember. One of the newspapers was describing the mood of the European leaders at the G20 summit in South Africa, which the US didn't participate. And it describes the mood of panic when they first heard about this plan, a mood of panic. They were scrambling. They were running around. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the reason for this, we have explained before in this program, in this podcast. The reason is that it's in the interest of the Europeans to maintain the US involved in this war. Yeah. Why? Because this war is an existential war for them against the power of Russia in order to defend the European imperialist interests. And they know they are unable to continue this war without the participation of the United States. Yeah. So they will wreck any peace plan just so that they're forcing the United States to continue involved.
That's a powerful set of interests there. Yesterday, or the day before, there was a leak of of two conversations. One was between Steve Witkoff and Yuri Ushakov, who is a presidential aide, very close person to Putin
in Russia. Yeah.
In Russia, and basically Witkoff was giving Ushakov talking points, saying, "Look, Putin should call Trump." And he should praise his peacemaking skills
in the Middle East.
And if he just says, if we get Donetsk, we'll agree. That's not going to lead anywhere. But if we present it like a hopeful thing, look, a 20-point peace plan like the one in Gaza.
Yes.
Basically, you come up with a deal, coaching him in how to deal with Trump, right?
Yes.
And how to present a peace proposal. And then Ushakov calls Kirill Dmitriev, who is presidential envoy in Russia. And they're saying, well, look, the Americans are asking us to present a proposal for discussions, not a peace plan, but a series of talking points, basically. And then the other guy says, well, yeah, but they're going to change it anyway. They're not going to present what we give them. I say, yeah, okay, but that's fine. But it's a starting point, isn't it? Let's just give them what they want. Now, besides the content of this, what's really stood out to me, I was thinking, this is serious leaking stuff. This is serious espionage.
Yes.
Right? We're talking about some of the highest officials in the world negotiating with each other. The only people who could have had access to this would have been Russian intelligence, and the Russians themselves, and American and European intelligence. These are the only ones who have the ability to intercept someone in the West.
Although one will think that these conversations take place over secure lines,
but they say that there's a WhatsApp,
some
which
of it
is
was
banned
on
in Russia,
WhatsApp,
which is banned in Russia. Anyway, but and no one has come out saying, "Hey, wait a minute, what's going on?" Clearly, this could not have been done without the consent of the top level of the U.S. intelligence community.
Yes.
Which shows what? Which shows that what are their interests? The narrative is this is a Russian plan. This is a Russian plan.
This is the idea they want to present. That Witkov is an idiot who just listens to what Putin says or the Russians say, and that he's basically an agent of Russian interests in the Trump administration, and they want to take him down. This has now been carried by all the... This is, I was reading, this is quite unprecedented because it's not just the leak that Bloomberg got, but also that Bloomberg got the actual audio files, not just the transcript, but the actual audio files. So it's been given to Bloomberg by the actual source of this wiretapping, basically, which can only be the U.S. intelligence agencies or perhaps the European intelligence agencies, with the aim of sabotaging the peace negotiations.
Exactly. The narrative is this is a Russian plan. Well, I mean, I don't think it is entirely the Russian plan, but if Russia had an input in it, it's because they are winning and they set the terms as winners of a war. But I was just thinking, when was it the person who released the files about the Iraq War? What was his name? Edward Snowden, and
Chelsea
Manning. They were hounded down.
Yes.
Never mind the crimes that they were revealing of U.S. imperialism in Iraq. Horrible, horrible crimes. They were hounded down, punished, and destroyed.
And including Assange as well.
Yeah. And they went to destroy them as humans.
Yes.
Crush them, right? And here, it's like no one is even commenting, wait a minute, what is going on here? Who has an interest in this? And this reveals a division within the West. We've talked about this division, but I think also a division within the
U.S. administration.
Yes. Because what has been... The media who's been having a go at Witkov, what are they saying? Rubio should take his place.
Yes.
He's a more professional negotiator. He knows how diplomacy works, and he protects the interests of... Well, what is the position of Rubio?
Exactly. Rubio's position is not exactly the same. We've seen him at the Geneva talks, basically taking out the main points of the 28-point plan in order to please the Ukrainian position. So his position is clearly that he doesn't want or is not so keen on a deal like this, and is more on the other side of putting pressure on Russia, putting more sanctions, there's a big party in the United States, in the Republican amongst the Republican elected officials, but also inside the administration. And what the commentators, the newspaper commentators, are saying is that these two camps are more or less led by J.D. Vance. This is the extreme let's retreat, let's make America great again by strengthening America and disentangling from foreign military adventures. This is the head of one party, let's say one wing, and Rubio is the head of the other wing. He's also warmongering in relation to Venezuela, Cuba, and so on, and he's not so keen on reaching a deal with Russia on Russia's terms. So this all makes sense, and this has been used by the media, that is by the U.S. capitalist establishment, all these big newspapers and media agencies, and people inside the intelligence community, to drive a wedge between the two of them, and to clip the wings of the section that wants a deal with Russia and disentangling the U.S. from the Ukraine war.
Yeah. We always say that when a regime nears its nadir, its end, we begin to see splits and divisions. As the masses rise, this is in revolutionary terms, as the masses rise, there's this division at the top where one wing says we need to repress, we need to crush the movement because otherwise this is going to develop into a full-blown revolution. And the other wing says, no, we need to give concessions, we need to retreat because otherwise if we repress, we're going to have an open rebellion and be overthrown. And both and when you reach that stage, both are right and both are wrong. And this is where we see like a process has similarities here, because this is U.S. imperialism experiencing a serious division within the ruling class. The Atlanticists, we can say, the dominant traditional wing of U.S. imperialism and Western imperialism, it's all the same kind of organism, we can say, with its heart in Washington, obviously. Their approach is, whatever happens, double down. Any challenge we see, double it down, go to war, crush, defeat. But it's not worked in the past years.
This was the Biden approach.
This was the Biden approach. This was the Obama approach. Although no, Obama I think had a slightly more nuanced. Careful. He was a bit more careful. He did think that we should withdraw to safeguard the interests of U.S. imperialism. Now Trump, there's another wing which is the J.D. Vance, the MAGA wing, which is a minority of the ruling class in a way. But they believe that this is unsustainable. This war is lost. We're going to keep throwing things at it. And these different conflicts around the world are sucking resources that we need to protect our core. And we can't do this. We need peace, not for the interests of Ukraine, right, but for the pure interests of U.S. imperialism. Now, Trump
the interest from 2 points of view. One, they're spending a lot of money they don't have. There's a massive budget deficit in the U.S. And two, they're overstretching themselves from a military point of view. As we just said, stockpiles and so on.
They didn't even have enough to attack Iran. If that war had gone on, they would have been in serious trouble because they're spending a lot of it in Ukraine. And Trump, when he came to power, he was leaning on the rebellious wing, let's say, the junior wing of the ruling class. But he's disappointed his base. It was an open rebellion against Trump last week in Congress, which almost unanimously voted to reveal the Epstein files. Let's see what happens to that. He's had an open clash with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now stepped back from from Congress, but I would say is maybe even more powerful outside of Congress. She denounced it. She said, "Doesn't matter who you vote for; it's all the same." She distanced herself from Trump, and she still has huge base of support amongst the core MAGA kind of base, and a big part of which is working class, and which is very angry. Now, as this has happened,
but the most important thing is that he's not delivered on the economy. That's at the bottom of all of this.
He's not delivered on anything, really speaking, which has given the war wing, the war party, more and more power. The old
more leverage
gang. Rubio has the crazy Cubans in Congress whose votes Trump needs. There's what's his name? Lindsey Graham and Johnson, Mike Johnson. They have other votes that Trump needs, and they're pulling in different direction. But this is tearing them up now, and now it's a situation where if they continue down this line, they're going to have a Saigon moment. This is what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Russia could overrun Ukraine. You could see a collapse. I mean, we don't know if it's going to happen right now or
Mm-hmm.
in a year or two, but it's clearly moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that would look even worse for US imperialism, but they can't help themselves. And they have the Europeans pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yes.
And who's paying for it?
Well, everyone's paying for it. The working class, that is, the working class in the West, the working class in Ukraine, because these are the people who've been sent to the front to die just for propaganda purposes in a war that's already lost, basically. And the working class is paying everywhere because all this drive towards militarism, military spending and so on is being paid by cuts in social spending and other areas.
Yeah. And raised high oil prices is leading to inflation. Is in Europe. We'll get to that in a minute. Leading to deindustrialization.
Just to say, you were saying about this wing of the U.S. administration that's in favor of retrenching. Just to make clear, they are not in favor of peace. They're just in favor of making a deal with Russia in Ukraine so that they can get out of that. But in reality, you just have to see their actions. They want to re-strengthen the U.S. military power in its own hemisphere. They're going for Venezuela. They've now built a massive military escalation in the Caribbean, where they now have 20% of the U.S. Navy is concentrated there. There's provocative deployment of B-2 and B-1 bombers and all sorts of things. This is not a peace party, but it's a wing of the U.S. administration that recognizes the limitations of U.S. imperialism and wants to rebuild the power of U.S. imperialism to concentrate on its main rival, which is China.
The problem is they're bound up in insoluble contradictions.
Yes, exactly.
Because what does the retreat from Ukraine mean?
Yes.
That is the real answer. What does the retreat? What does the defeat in Ukraine? What does admitting defeat in Ukraine mean? Mm-hmm. It means the end of U.S. as the sole superpower on the planet.
Exactly.
It's the end of the U.S. in that role. And it would mean a massively strengthened, morally, industrially, economically, militarily strengthened Russia. And it would mean a huge political crisis across the Western world, which obviously
and
these people
on the other hand, the clash with China is not going very well.
No,
there was an article, I think it was in the Financial Times, an opinion article that they said the latest deal between Trump and Xi Jinping over trade, which is basically just like a ceasefire. It's a delay of the measures, postponement of the measures that have been agreed in relation to tariffs and so on, retaliation. This will be seen in the future as the moment in which the U.S. realized they could not crush China into submission. Yeah. They put up tariffs. They put up tariffs to 140%, was it, or 150%? They put sanctions. They withdrew access to advanced technology, microchips, and so on. And they did not break China. China retaliated, and in the end, China came out unscathed from that struggle. So not only the United States is unable to militarily defeat Russia in Ukraine, it's unable to economically crush China in the trade war. So they are in a very difficult position. It all comes down to this question we've been discussing, the relative decline of U.S. Imperialism in the world.
Yeah, and the fact that they're now taking on these two countries at once. They can't take out either one of them on their
separately.
And they want to take them on both at once. And that's why they need a peace deal with Russia. Because that would actually...
this is also reflected in something else. I mean, we're veering off the script now, but there's this question where Trump called the Japanese president to say you need to scale down the provocations against China because we're not interested in this conflict, can't win it.
Yeah. We'll talk about this hopefully next week. But I think that's a good place to end it there. We have to follow the what happens. But it's clear that there are powerful forces at play. But Europe, François Hollande, the previous president of France, wrote an article, a desperate article in Le Monde the other day. It says, The break is already here. For Trump, our continent is finished. It no longer counts. As he told Zelensky in the Oval Office, we no longer hold the cards. We have neither oil nor gas, no major industrial champions, and no dominance in the digital sphere. And even when we still post trade surpluses, they come at the US's expense, which is why Trump is leveraging tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
When faced with him, we are timid. Worse, we tolerate his extravagances and do not stand up enough for the values that we hold dear. Wonder what those values are. In short, in his eyes, we are second division players compared to the empires and financial powers.
Not only in his eyes, though.
Not only in his eyes.
That reflects the real situation.
Yes.
But yeah, that's quite an indictment. I mean, he is saying things as they are. Europe plays no role, has no leverage, has no power, and has very little say in world affairs. It just, I mean, even these Ukraine negotiations are taking place between whom? Between Russia and the United States. Yeah. The Europeans are not even consulted. They're not even told.
Yeah.
That's the real role they play. It's not just in the US's eyes. Yeah. It's a reflection of the real weight of European imperialism in the world.
The fact is, whether Rubio wins or J.D. Vance's wins inside the Oval Office, the U.S. is retreating from Europe.
Yes.
And the Europeans are desperate to keep that. They talk about peace in Ukraine. They talk about, that Russia has to be beaten back.
Yes.
With what? With American weapons.
Yes.
With American troops. With American security guarantees. With the American intelligence. That is what they want. Because the withdrawal of America, economic, diplomatic, military, what he explains, that Europe is not important for America anymore, is a existential threat to European capitalism. That's basically what it is. I'm just going to list out the crisis that US is going through, and then we can talk about it in general. Europe is going through. The Ukraine war has pulled the plug from the European economy, just in the form of cheap gas. We've seen a complete collapse of European industry, heavy industry, mechanical industry, all of the things that Europe was leading or partially dominant in. Productivity has been stagnant in Europe for the past 15 years. Public debt is now at an alarmingly high level in Central European countries such as Italy, France, and Spain, Britain.
It's well over 100% in all of these countries.
Yeah. It's funny because it's the poorer countries where it's less, actually. The US is now imposing tariffs, which means that they're pushing for industries to be moved, production to be moved to the US. This started before. This started during Biden.
Holland was saying that the Europe has trade surpluses with the US. That's why the US is imposing tariffs.
Exactly. The US it is retrenching, and like every empire, when it reaches a stage of decline, it starts sucking up resources into it. You know, I like ice bathing in the winters. You know that. And what happens actually when you come out of ice cold water is that you get very warm, very cold hands and feet and head. Okay. Why? Because the body is drawing in resources to heat up the core. And that is kind of what's happening with U.S. imperialism. They're sucking out resources out of former colonies, dependencies, friends,
and allies.
That's what America First means.
Yes.
That's what America First means. It means, we've been holding our hands under you, no longer, because before Europe was an important outpost for American imperialism, is no longer. NATO, they're withdrawing NATO forces, which means Europe needs to defend itself somehow. European capitalism. Not only defend itself, what they want is not just defend themselves. They want to maintain their position as imperialist powers.
Areas of influence. Yeah.
Which means they go out in the world and dictate terms to poorer countries. And then you have, at the same time, the threat of China, cheap goods on a higher level coming in, and Russia after the Ukraine war, what's Europe going to be faced with? It's going to be faced with a massively strengthened Russia militarily right on its borders, which is going to mean what? Which means that the Russians are going to demand concessions, diplomatic, political, and most importantly, economic, in Eastern Europe, which is what? Which is the domain of European imperialism. That's what is about for these people, and it's all collapsing, and they're desperate to keep this process from happening. What are your comments?
Yeah, perhaps the one place where the crisis of European capitalism is revealed in its most extreme form, it's Germany, and this is quite striking because 10 years ago, when there was the European debt crisis, Germany was were in a strong position still, and the debt crisis was mainly developing in peripheral countries like Greece and Spain and Italy and Ireland, Portugal, sorry. And Germany was still the motor force of Europe, the engine of the European economy. And now it's completely reversed. Germany is in the worst position of any other European economy. In 2023, 2024, they were in recession. 25 is not finished yet, but if they have any growth this year, will be like 0.2%, which is like 3 years of stagnation. Someone said that this is the worst period for Germany's economy since the Second World War, 70 years.
Yeah.
And there's a process of growing deindustrialization, where Germany was based on heavy industry, engineering, and so on, know-how, technology, and is now being overtaken by China. Was it the last month? I can't remember the exact figure. Was it in October, I think? For the first time, Germany had a trade deficit with China in machine tools, which is unbelievable. It used to be the other way around, that China was exporting cheap commodity consumer goods, and Germany was exporting to China the machines to build those. And now it's come the other way around. And there was some article. Okay, well, Germany is also losing jobs in a big scale. I have some figures here. It says the industrial sector of Germany has lost 250,000 jobs since 2019. That's a 4% contraction of the workforce. The automotive industry, which is a cornerstone of German manufacturing, has lost 50,000 jobs in just 1 year. That's a 7% drop in employment in that industry, which was key to Germany. And there's many other facts and figures that can be given. And what you said, sanctions on Russia, the loss of cheap energy has damaged Germany particularly because they were very closely integrated. And many of Germany's key industries are energy intensive. And there were some figures here. The Germany's manufacturing index is now down at, all manufacturing is down to 90 from a level of 100 in 2021. But the chemical sector, for instance, is now down at 80.
That's the energy intensive sector.
Chemical sector is now down at 80. That means it lost 20 points since 2021. We're talking about 4 years. The energy intensive sector is also down at 80. Chemicals is under 80. The other one, all of the energy intensive industries is down at 80. That means 20 points lost. It's really staggering. It's phenomenal, and it just happened in 2 or 3 years. Of course, this is not the only reason for the industrial decline of Germany, the economic decline of Germany, which has been accumulating for a long period of time. But the loss of this cheap energy has been like a tipping point where this has gone into almost free fall. It's really staggering, and it's having a massive impact in Germany.
Well, we've said this before. The European capitalists have not invested in anything. I was looking at the figures. Europe is the market where there's the highest level of yields paid out, and the lowest level of investment.
Exactly.
Which is what? Which is which is an indication that they're just sucking out old investments, living off old investments.
Yes.
That's what the European capitalists have been doing.
Yes.
Of the top 50 major European companies, I think there's 2 that's been established in the past 50 years. And those are ASM. One of them is ASML, which was established in the 80s. So it's not even. If you look at at America, you have Google, Facebook, Meta. These are all from the past few years. The closest you get to that is Spotify, which was established in 2006, which is not even in the top 50, by the way.
It's a Swedish company.
It's a Swedish company, yeah. But we're talking about European.
Yeah.
It's not European Union. But what does that mean? That means a ruling class which has not invested in actual development.
And they're paying for it now.
The investment in research and development is lower than America, lower than China, lower than everywhere else, more or less. And they've just been sucking up what was built in the post-war period and living off of that fat, basically. And they've been going more and more at it. And now they're in a stage where the productivity is really beginning to reveal itself. They're competing.
And China has overtaken them.
And China has overtaken them.
There was a statement, an official statement. There's some discussions in the European Union. There's the European Commissioner for Industry, Sejourne, and he said basically that we need to look at all these Chinese investments in Europe. Yeah. China is investing in Europe in order to circumvent some of the tariffs and so on, is installing electric vehicle battery plants, I think in Hungary, in Spain. These are billion euro investments. Is installing electrical vehicle assembly plants in different parts of Europe. And the European Union is now complaining that China is not transferring technology, which is usually what used to happen the other way around, isn't it? That the West was investing in China, but not wanting to hand over the technology and taking extreme measures for that. Yeah. Now it's the other way around. That the Europeans are complaining that China's investing here, but these are just assembly plants. They're not transferring any of the technology, and they want to put new rules in order to prevent that from happening. So
I read an article by Wolfgang Münchau about a month ago. He was the finance, like a very prominent columnist in the Financial Times for a while. I think he was an editor, actually. Yes. But he is obviously a very prominent person in terms of German and European economy. And he said, Europe has an innovation problem, right? Which is that we're not basically, from a capitalist point of view, he said, we're not developing the means of production. We are relying on these old monopolies, which are not developing anything. They're just living off old fat. And what we need is a capitalist destruction, creative destruction. That is, some industries have to go under and we have to build up new industries. And he said, we need to do that. We just need to have creative destruction. And we need to deregulate as well. But here's the point. Why? Who is going to destroy themselves? Which capitalist class? The German capitalist class is say, we got Mercedes, we got Volkswagen. We're making tons of money. I mean, for us to reestablish a whole new auto industry or a whole new industry and destroy this one would mean hundreds of billions of investments and long periods with no real profits being made and lots of risk involved. We don't care about that. We're getting our investments many times back just by sucking these dry. And the French are going to say the same thing, and the Greeks are going to say the same thing. And then there's this question of regulation. You know, in the EU, anyone who lives in the EU knows that if you go and buy feta cheese in a supermarket, it says Greek-style cheese. Because if it's not made in Greece, you're not allowed to call it feta cheese. Well, that's something that a lot of companies always complain about. The EU bureaucracy, the EU regulations. But all of that is in place to what? To protect national monopolies. I mean, the feta is just one tiny example. It's not really big. But it's precisely because every single capitalist class has an interest in developing their own monopolies, which are living off the fat that was produced by the working class in the whole of the post-war period. And they have no interest in changing this. So this idea that, we
And
should
also,
just...
sorry, another side of what they complain about regulations and so on is labor regulations and environmental regulations. They've been conquered by the working class over a long period of time that they want to completely destroy.
Yes, this is the next point I wanted to say, because that's the solution of Minsha. Minsha says, we need to innovate ourselves out of this crisis. In other words, we need to develop the means of production, and by that, raise the productivity of labor, and through that, raise living standards.
But can I say that this is exactly what Draghi said in his famous report. He said, but in order to do that, we need 800 billion euro of new investments. Where's this money going to come from?
Exactly. Who's going to pay this?
Yes.
But the IMF has a different view. I'm holding here in my hands the latest regional economic outlook notes about Europe, which was released earlier this month. And they paint a very bleak picture. They say, look, we got this public debt. They're just focusing on the public debt. They say we have all of these things. NATO, by the way, NATO withdrawal also means, and the increase in NATO spending is also a transference of resources to the US. Because where are they going to buy all these new weapons from? Most of the weapon systems are locked into American manufacturers.
I think it's 65% of all weapons spending in Europe goes to US companies.
Yeah, so that's another transfer of wealth from Europe to the US.
Yes.
And they list all of these things that we list, and they say, well, the only way to get around it, they say the average European debt is around 60% of GDP now. That's not a weighted calculation. So they're just taking, France has got 114%, and Moldova or whatever, Luxembourg has much less, and then those are two divided. Anyway, so in reality, it's much higher than that.
More, than that.
But they say the average debt is around 60%. And if it continues like this, nothing changes, it just continues as it is now. Interest rates don't go up, don't fall. In 15 years, by 2040, we're going to have double that. Double the budget deficits that we have now. In order to maintain a budget deficit below 90%, so we're still going to go up by around 50%. We have to cut around 5% of GDP per year of spending, which is a huge amount.
Massive,
which is hundreds of billions of euros.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, we have a few suggestions. First of all, we need to deregulate the labor market. We need to incentivize work, because people don't have incentives to work. We need to make it...
People are lazy.
People are lazy, basically. We need to push them with a rod, make them easier to fire and easier to hire. Incentivize work and incentivize hiring, because if you hire someone, you can fire again easily. You're not going to think so much about it. Then we need to adjust pension systems to mitigate the cost of aging and increase longevity. So raising pension age and limiting decreasing the amount. Increasing the centralization of spending at the EU level, the concentration of power in the EU bureaucracy. Tax policy reform and improved revenue administration, which means higher taxation, basically. But all of this, they say, we need to phase this in the salami method, in other words. And then they say spending prioritizations and improvements in spending efficiency. So cuts. And then at the end, they say rethinking the role of government may be unavoidable in some countries. If reforms and medium-term consolidation are insufficient, then more radical fiscal measures could include reassessing the scope of public services and other government functions, potentially affecting the social contract. What this means is, don't take it for granted. And they say a lot more. Further on, they basically say, look, people have come to take free education, free healthcare,
As a normal thing.
as a normal thing. We can't continue with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said these cuts will add 1.5% of cuts to GDP. We still have another 3.5% to go to reach the 5%.
Yeah.
So this is a frontal attack against the working class.
This is a program of class war.
And then they say, on top of that, we need to cut 0.75% additionally every single year, which then gets us to 5% in 5 years.
Yeah.
And what they say, I think the interesting thing is the social contract. What is the social contract?
Yeah. What this means is that everything that was taken for granted or was rather conquered by the working class over a period of economic growth after the World War II is now going to be destroyed. Free education, free healthcare, pensions, and everything. So, I mean, this is a program of class war. And there was another article in the Financial Times that was saying, look, we are now competing with, we now don't have a market in the US. We are competing with China. But the problem with China is that China doesn't want anything that we produce. We are only buying from China. And the only way, this says, there's only one solution to this. And we must severely reform. When they say reform, they mean counter-reform, basically. We need to severely reform our system of regulation, again, same idea, and the welfare. This is not that welfare is bad in itself, but it's not sustainable. We can't pay for it. When they say we cannot pay for it, what they mean is that there is now a direct contradiction between maintaining the profits of the European capitalist and its role in the world and paying for basic subsistence, basic existence conditions, basic living conditions for the working class. The two are in direct contradiction. And the problem when they talk about social contract, what they really mean is that implementing these measures would mean an all-out assault on the working class, which will inevitably lead to a massive social explosion. And we already see the developments of that, say, in France, where for 1 year now, we've seen one government after another fall over the question of the budget. Which is precisely this question of where they're going to get 60 billion or 50 billion euro worth of cuts so that they can pay the debt.
The interest rates.
The interest rates.
Some of the interests.
Yes. In Britain, I think the figure in Britain is 100 billion pounds are paid every year just in interest on the debt. This is money that the state takes from social spending and from other spending and gives it directly to financial market speculators, people who bought bonds because they thought this is good business, and they're not parasitical, completely parasitical.
But I think that's the point. These guys have been the capitalist class. They basically always say that the reason why they should rule is because they innovate, they develop, capitalism develops society and modernizes and raises everyone. But they haven't been developing anything. By the way, they also talk about de-risking in this IMF report. They talk about de-risking investments, which
means that the state will back you up.
The state will back you up, right? So they shouldn't take any risk. They've been sleeping. They haven't been doing anything. I was about to say.
They haven't been doing what the only progressive role that capitalists play in capitalist system would be to invest, to innovate, to develop technology and the means of production.
They haven't been doing anything of that sort. They've been falling behind on productivity as a result because they've just been busy looting the existing system. And now that they're facing competition from China and the US and Russia, who's going to pay for it? The working class. The way to raise productivity is to exploit the working class harder.
Yes.
And that's the social contract is like a sanitized way of saying the situation which arose after World War II. Mass protests coming from below, and with the collaboration of, with the betrayal of the social democratic and communist leaders, by the way, the bourgeois made an agreement. They said, look, we're going to give a slight kind of a tendentially civilized existence to the European workers, free education, free healthcare, all of these things. And as a result, and then we expect you not to rebel. That's what the point. We expect the working class not
buying social peace.
Buying social peace. But when you rip up, when one side of a contract reneges on their part, well, why shouldn't the other part?
Social peace will come to an end.
Social peace
There's
will
just
come
been
to an end.
a general strike in Belgium over some of these questions, the deregulation of the labor market and so on. There's a new law that's being introduced, and in France we have seen a massive uprising in September with this movement, the Let's Block Everything movement.
Yeah.
And this is what's brought all these governments down.
Yeah. The IMF asks, how can Europe pay for things that it cannot afford? The question is, can the working class afford the capitalist class?
Yes.
That's really the main question.
Exactly.
Because they are all of this machinery, all of this industry, all of these things that are there. These are creations of the workers themselves. This is not the capitalists didn't go and screw the machines or even invent them.
You know, there was a figure I saw the other day. Spain is presented as this economic miracle, the only country in Europe that's growing substantially, and on the surface figures, this is true. There's been growth of GDP, but then they had this other statistic about the growth of real wages, purchasing power of wages, discounting inflation. And wages in Spain now have the same purchasing power as they had 25 years ago. There's been no advance for the working class. The economy has been growing, but the money has not been going to the workers, it's been going somewhere else, to the pockets of the capitalists. In countries like Greece and Italy, real incomes are now lower by 4% and 5% than they were 20 years ago. This is an unbelievable state of affairs and an unsustainable state of affairs. This will provoke a social explosion.
And then you have a bonanza in the stock market, and dividends going out like there's no tomorrow.
Bitcoin going through the roof, and speculation.
Yes, class struggle is coming to Europe, and there's nothing anyone can say or do about it.
Yes.
The question is, how is this going to be solved? How is this crisis going to be solved? If it's not cutting our welfare, how can we solve the crisis? There's been some people saying we need to tax the rich. I think that's kind of gripped the imagination of a lot of people on the left in particular, a lot of working class people, which justifiably they see.
It's an idea that makes sense because there's this massive, extravagant accumulation, grotesque accumulation of wealth at the top, while people's living conditions and social service and so on are going down. So it's an obvious answer. Let's take the money from the people who have the money. Yeah. The problem is that you cannot tinker around the edges of the capitalist system, because what will happen is there's actually some concrete, real life examples of this. But what will happen if there is a significant amount of taxing of the rich is that the rich will then go on a strike of capital. Say, okay, you take money, we're not going to invest. They're not investing very much already, but they're going to invest less. Or they're going to take the money somewhere else. They have an army of lawyers and accountants that find loopholes, and they put the money in tax havens in the Seychelles or in the Caribbean, or in low-tax economies like Ireland or Holland. And so they will always find a way to avoid this. The only real way of taking the money from the rich is by expropriating capital, expropriating the big banks, the insurance companies, expropriating the means of production, that is the factories, the fixed capital. And on the basis of that, it will be possible to democratically plan the economy so that all these resources that already exist, all this technology that's potentially liberating for humanity, free to free leisure time and so on, to use it for the benefit of the many and not the parasitical few. But you're not going to do that by taxing the rich. The one example I wanted to give is the Holland government, actually, that you mentioned before. The Holland government came to power on the promise of taxing the rich. And they introduced a mild to significant tax on the top income earners. And what happened? Immediately, many of them went abroad. The owner of L'Oreal moved their tax domicile to, I think it was Luxembourg, I think. Gerard Depardieu, the famous actor, moved to Russia. He is now paying tax in Russia, though he doesn't live there. and so on. This happened so quickly that the Holland government, I think, lasted only this tax on the rich lasted only for 1 year. Then they had to retreat because they can't.
And I think it even goes further than that, because the idea, if you have a government which genuinely supports the interests of the working class, the capitalists have many means of undermining it, because they can come to live with a slightly higher or lower tax, but they would seek to undermine that. And if you break that, then they're going to come for you. Now, what are the means of power that the capitalists hold? Is one, the influence in the state apparatus, the unelected part of the state, which is 99.999% of the state apparatus, is directly linked or controlled by the capitalists. And even the ones that are elected, most of them are in the pocket of the bourgeois. Then you have the rest of the economy. I mean, we talked about the Venezuelan revolution a few episodes ago, and what you saw there was just the idea of Chavez, the president, being a representative of the working masses, right at the top of the state, meant precisely the mobilization of the entire apparatus, in the state apparatus and in the economy, to sabotage and to bring that government down. So
the Chavez government attempted to regulate capitalism, to introduce controls that will benefit the working class,
which is what taxing the rich is.
Exactly, foreign exchange controls, price controls, and a few other things. What the capitalists did was, first of all, a massive strike of capital. They ceased to invest. Second, a sabotage of the economy, direct sabotage of they were hoarding, they were withholding products from the market in order to hit the pockets and the livelihoods of working class families. There was there's this one company in Venezuela, Grupo Polar, that controls most of the food distribution chain, and they were withdrawing products from the market. And there was even an example. The government introduced a price cap on white rice, right, which is a main staple for working class people. And what this company did is that they ceased production and distribution of white rice, and they introduced other types like flavorized rice, colorized rice, in order to evade controls. So in fact, this is what we always say: you cannot control what you don't own. And you cannot plan what you don't control. The only way to plan the economy in the benefit of the majority of the people is if the working class owns and controls the means of production.
Yes, we are in favor of a progressive taxation. We are in favor of taxes, higher taxes for the rich. But that's not going to solve. That's not going to make Mercedes or Volkswagen reestablish their plants or reestablish workplaces, rehire
40,000
tens of thousands of people, and develop the manufacture. No. If anything,
their decisions are determined by maximum profit in the short term for a small minority of unelected people.
Precisely. And the point is precisely to get to the core of the problem, which is right there in production, in the economy, and that should be controlled by the working class, which, after all, has built all of that. I'm sure that hardly any of the CEOs of Mercedes or Volkswagen have added anything to the development of cars. It's ordinary engineers who are now also working class and mechanics on the ground who are the ones who are making these machines run and develop. I think that's a good place to end the second segment. Now, just briefly towards the end, we tried this last week, and we will try every week now, or as often as possible, to deal with questions that come up from our audience. You can write your questions in YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you listen to us, and we do listen. We do read everything that people write, try to incorporate it, but we want to try to answer some of these a bit more directly on a regular basis. Now, there's one that I thought was interesting. I'm just going to read it out. It says, this one was particularly interesting. This was the previous episode which highlighted Epstein and the rot in the ruling class. It says, the Epstein class is quite a moniker, and how you also tied those scientific studies into why these people are such depraved perverts just clinched it. It is frightening how openly arrogant, callous, and depraved they act, and with seemingly no consequences. The fires of hell clearly do not make them flinch, never mind asking what their mothers would think of their conduct. as a pretty good sum up of what we think about the Epstein class. And we're supposed to look up to these people. Meanwhile, now here's the interesting bit. Meanwhile, my rent is going up again, and it's keeping me up at night. High rent has been a mass crisis for years now, yet nothing is being done about it. How is an economy supposed to keep going when most of its people are poor? I haven't had a good answer to that one, but I have seen that misery can last a very, very long time. You say things are coming to a boil. I hope you're right, though the prospect scares me. Revolutions have uncertain outcomes. I'm so tired. There's a lot here. There's a lot of questions here, actually.
Yes.
And maybe we can telegraphically go through them.
But it's a very good reflection of what many people are thinking.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
I think that's why I raised it. I
Yes.
think this is a very good reflection, precisely. High rent is keeping a lot of people up. It's keeping me up.
Yes.
And nothing is being done about it. How is an economy supposed to keep going when most of its people are poor?
Yes.
Well, that's one of the things in the IMF report and all of these so-called restructuring proposals. No one is answering. How are you going to keep an economy with this amount of cuts? First of all, a huge amount of the wealth created is going straight into the bottomless pit of interest payments. Then another pit is now created for defense spending, which is also doesn't serve any social purpose. And now you have what's it called? Attacks on welfare and wages and living standards. Surely that pulls out the bottom from the market. That undermines demand, which in turn would undermine the economy. The idea that you just attack people's living standards and then you can sell more things and you can produce more things.
Sell more things to whom?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who's gonna...
Because at the end of the day, the capitalists do not invest in order to produce things that are useful. They invest in order to have a return on the investment, profits.
Yeah.
So in order to have profits, you need to be able to sell these products to someone. And if you're cutting the living standards of the working class, you're reducing the internal market. Never mind the fact that there is no external market. Who are they going to sell it to? There's now a descent into protectionism and so on. So that is a very good question. And the answer is it's impossible. You cannot have a growing economy when the majority of the people are poor. And if you have that, it tells you something. It tells you, there is some economic growth, but it's all going to the top 1%, the capitalist class.
Yeah.
And this is not only our opposition to capitalism. It's not just a moral, this is wrong or this is unfair. No, it's also that this doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't allow for society to develop in general.
Exactly. Which leads us to the second question. It says, I've seen that misery can last a very, very long time. This seems to imply that where is the revolution?
Changes,
Nothing changes.
And he says something about things are about to boil, is it?
But you say things are about to boil. I think before we go to the last bit, which is also interesting.
Things are about to boil. I was at the Congress of the Brazilian organization recently, and this question came up, and also at the discussion at the Revolution Festival. At the Revolution Festival, we were discussing about the crisis in Europe and the big movements in France, the big movements in Italy, and someone asked, "Why is it such delay in Britain? We haven't seen the same thing in Britain?" And I said. And I pointed out to some Italian comrades in the room, and I said, I'm sure that in September, when there were the big movements in France, there were many people in Italy saying, oh, nothing's happening in Italy. Look at France. In France, they know how to fight. And in Italy, nothing's happened. And on top of this, we have a right-wing government, a right-wing populist government. And people just voted for that government. And then all of a sudden, there was a big social explosion, a big working class, a massive general strike in Italy. So what this means is that things happen in a dialectical way. There's an accumulation of anger, there's an accumulation of pressure. People can't pay their rents. People are thinking, why are we poor? And then one day, sometimes maybe from an accidental question, there is a big explosion of the class struggle. Our task is not to say exactly when it will happen, because this is impossible, but to look at all the different factors that are building up towards that social explosion.
Yeah, there is this idea that communists make revolutions.
Yes.
Oh, you want a revolution? Yes, we do want a revolution, but we don't make them.
No.
capitalism makes revolutions precisely because it creates the conditions. But a revolution doesn't happen in a straight line. A revolution is not like one more person getting angrier, one more person getting angrier, or everyone just getting a little bit angrier. But you have to look at the subterranean processes which are taking place, because you can have for a long time an accumulation of anger, which is latent, which is not clearly expressed. You can have people who take a hit and they say, oh, well, those at the top know what they're doing. We're just going to squeeze our belts, tighten our belts a little bit more. Don't worry, someone's got control of the situation.
Where we're going. Yeah.
And they do that 100 times. And you can talk to them. I mean, I've talked with these kind of people. And they say, no, this is not, don't worry. Look, what are you talking about? Communism, revolution. Look at this system. It works, right? But then, over time, that precise defense of the system, that kind of standing up for the system, but constantly being disappointed, leads to a point where, over an accidental thing, you can have a complete explosion. That can turn entirely to its opposite.
You could say that the Italian events, there was a general strike, there were two general strikes over the question of Palestine, was over an accidental question, because normally foreign affairs like that wouldn't affect the country's policies, or never mind the country's policies, a general strike, people leaving work for one day. And obviously the question of Palestine is felt very strongly in Italy and in many other countries. There is a factor of radicalization. But what the Italian comrades were saying is that this is something else as well. It's the question of Palestine, but it's the question of 20 years of cuts, austerity, of the drip of the erosion of the conditions of the working class. And there is another factor as well, I think, that is important, that is, if the economy was growing, right, if you have the expectation that, okay, now things are a bit tough, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. There's something that's coming. There's going to be a better situation. Then most people will be prepared to make some sacrifices, wait for a little bit. But this has now been going on for how long? Since the 2008 crisis is now 17 years. There's a whole generation of people, anyone who's under 30, they lived all their conscious life under the crisis of capitalism, under this particular crisis of capitalism, and the war, and this is what's producing this radicalization of this so-called Gen Z revolutions and so on. So we say things are about to boil over because all the factors are accumulating.
And in fact, I mean, I don't know if this comrade is in Europe or not, but Europe is, because of the reasons why we explained, is going to be at the center of all of this.
Exactly.
There's a massive crisis of economic crisis, a democratic crisis, crisis of democracy, a moral crisis, and people.
There is a very strong competition, but I will say that Germany is at the front of the line for countries that are about to have a big social explosion.
Yeah, and obviously these will affect one another. The other element is the question of leadership. You know, because the lack of a working class leadership also means that this pressure is not given any expression.
Yes,
and obviously this delays the process. But
also makes it more explosive.
Makes it more explosive.
This is what happened in Italy, isn't it? Yeah. In Italy, the leadership of the main trade union with millions of workers affiliated, the CGIL, was refusing to take any steps. Yeah. And it was a smaller union that just set a date, and then boom, everyone came out. Exactly. And then it forced the main union to also jump on board.
And that leads us to the next point, which is, he says, revolutions have uncertain outcomes.
Yes.
And they do. I mean, you said, I said it to you before, and you said yes, but...
But capitalism has one certain outcome. Things are only going to get worse under capitalism.
Yeah. The point is, yes, capitalism creates revolutions. Yes. But whether those revolutions will be successful
or not
depends on the conscious element in them. In the people, the groups of people who are prepared for when the revolution comes, understand the underlying reasons for that revolution, which is what our podcast is all about, and understands the only solution, which under capitalism, the solution to all of these disparate movements, which seemingly have very, very different aims and conditions and contexts, all of them can be boiled down to, in the last analysis, to the rule of the capitalist class over society or not, or the working class, basically. But in order to, but you need to have an understanding of that before the revolutionary events. There needs to be a strong element, strong leadership core in each of these movements that understands that understands the process and the laws of a revolution as it unfolds, and understands to make this the process of the working class rising to this task and becoming conscious of its own task go quicker.
Yes.
That's the point. And so what we're saying is, the better prepared you are, the more uncertain the outcome of a revolution is. We can never guarantee. The more certain, sorry.
Yes.
The less uncertainty there is of the outcome of a revolution.
Exactly.
And that's why you need to get organized. We cannot promise victory, but we can say this. First, one, the working class has never been stronger. It's the majority of the world's population, which is far more than the Bolsheviks had in 1917, which was only a fraction of the Russian society. The capitalist class has never been as discredited or as weak as it is now, in the sense that there has no legitimacy, no legs to stand on. Not only the working class, but large layers of the middle class are now becoming proletarianized and moving to the left and becoming radicalized and are open to radical ideas. The only feature that's lacking in this situation is a party that's capable of expressing this, that's big enough, and which has the correct program. And that's what we're building in the Revolutionary Communist International.
Exactly.
So join us if you want more certainty about the future and more hope. Yeah, I think we can end it on those lines. It's been a great show. We'll be back again next Thursday, 6 p.m. For all of you out there, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you consume it. And also to write your comments and your questions, your criticism in the comment sections in those places, so that we can engage in this more in the debate with you. My name is Hamid Alizadeh, Jorge Martín, Against the Stream. See you next week.